Hey everybody, let's take a break right now. Let's talk about turkeys and turkey hunting, which actually is a magazine that we've published for well over 30 years. It started off as the Turkey Hunter, actually, and then we merged it with Turkey and Turkey Hunting in, I believe it was 1991. But with me today is Jason Lupardus. He is from the Turkeys for Tomorrow, a newer organization that you might not have heard about. Jason, welcome to the program.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. For some reason, they brought this Kentucky hillbilly in to be the CEO of this small organization. We are almost 4 years old. Come next month, we're a nonprofit, 501c3, and trying to do something good for turkeys, man.
And it's sorely needed that we know of throughout the country. And that's one thing I want to talk to you about today, Jason, is I know a lot of viewers, a lot of listeners have seen significant changes in the turkey populations in their areas. And I know you guys are working to address that from a national level.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something not new. Wild turkey decline really first began in discussion around 2012, and it kind of circulated behind the scenes. A lot of people didn't put it out publicly because, hey, we're trying to manage turkeys. Even our state agencies were very apprehensive to bring this to light. But honestly, in the last 5 years, it's a big deal. And so we've seen turkey populations that may be down from what we theoretically think 20-25% or more. We've had states like Arkansas that their population was decimated in this past decade, where they almost shut the season down.
My goodness.
The Southeast has probably hit the hardest, and we have some ideas or thoughts of why it may be that way.
Let's talk about what are some of the, I know what some of the reasons are, but what the Southeast shocked me, because when I think about, I grew up turkey hunting. I didn't start until I joined deer and deer hunting and turkey hunting 30 years ago. And that's back when the turkey populations in the upper Midwest were booming.
Absolutely.
And that was the whole precipice of turkey and turkey hunting, was that there's this growing segment of hunters. But when I thought about the traditional areas for turkey, I thought about Alabama, I thought about Georgia, South Carolina, Missouri, some of these states, and those are some of the states that are being hit the hardest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of interesting if we think about the time when the wild turkey was being reintroduced. And the really interesting thing about that is when that occurred, it was the perfect storm. That perfect storm happened to be when fur prices was higher than at any other time in the history of the U.S. And I'm going to give you one example state because it really tells a beautiful story here. But in Missouri was known to move more furs than any other state in the nation, okay? And at that time, it happened to be when turkeys were being reintroduced. So what that means is, in the absence of all these predators are typically on the landscape, turkey populations boomed at reintroduction, okay? And so there's a lot of correlation to that. At that time, we're seeing on average a 1-to-7 or 1-to-8 hen-to-poult ratio. What does that mean? So that means that basically every 7 to 8 poults survive to be adults.
Wow.
What is that today in the South? It's like a 1 to a 1.8 or 1 to a 1.9 or something. If it's a 1 to a 2 ratio, you have a stable population, not growing, not declining.
Wow. And
so we're in still a steady decline. And if you look at Missouri today, where that state at one time was harvesting 60,000 plus birds,
Yep.
They're harvesting more birds than anyone else in the nation. Now they're just harvesting around 40,000 birds. Okay,
well, not quite, but yeah.
Yeah, and so it's around that level. We know that predators are a big part of this playbook, and we know in some places it's not always the magic bullet, right? But we know that's one of the important things that we need to consider when we're working with landowners. And here in the eastern U.S., you know, like what 83% of all land in the eastern U.S. is privately owned. And so if we're going to do something, we have to do it on private lands. And so we're trying to develop something called private landowner cooperatives for wild turkeys. We're taking a playbook out of QDMA with cooperatives in the past, even though it's not QDMA anymore, it's NDA, but that's something that Brian Murphy, I think, did a fantastic job with. And we're taking a similar approach, because if we're going to basically manage a species that covers multiple properties, you know what the average home range of a turkey is?
Let me guess. Average home range, I'm going to guess 4 miles?
Man, that's pretty good. You may have a biology degree. Okay, that's good. No, that's really good. So on average, depending on where you are, it could be anywhere from 2 to 4 square miles, right?
Okay.
And so 1 square mile, 640 acres. So let's think about with this one bird and how many potential properties they're on. If we look at average land ownership in the state we're in today, let's talk about Indiana while we're here. In this state, I think average land rural ownership is probably around 150 acres.
Yep.
Now tell me how many landowners this one turkey may be on. And if you're in a state where you only harvest 1 or 2 birds, now we have a real issue, maybe even with harvest. So managing a bird that covers a lot of ground, we have to look at habitat, number one, right? It's the foundation. Is the habitat good? Are we taking care of brood range and nesting habitat? Biggest limiting factors there. Number 2, are we treating the predators, if we have high predator numbers, in order so they can have a successful nest? We know that with bobwhite quail and with waterfowl, if we trap at the correct time of year, we can really dramatically increase nest success and basically broods that will survive. For bobwhite quail, if we do that 2 weeks prior to nest initiation, I can help change a bobwhite quail population in 1 year by 10 to 15%.
That's amazing.
Okay? So that's number 2. Number 3 is truly harvest. We have to think about how we as people are harvesting on a scale. And so if we are in poor habitat, that's going to be different than really good habitat. You might be able to harvest more birds. And so when we start looking at all these things, all of a sudden there's a lot of opportunities to correctly manage bird populations. But it's got to start at the private landowner level. It can't just be public lands.
You got to start there. But the other thing, too, that I think is important, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jason, but we know, like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, do we need to rethink harvest strategies? Because in some states, my state, Wisconsin, you get 1 tag, but you can go out and buy 3, 4, 5 other tags. Now, if I'm hammering all the longbeards on a small property, you said 150 acres, I'm talking 20 or 40 acres, and you got guys putting that much pressure on them, jakes aren't reproducing, are they?
You're correct.
The success is pretty low.
Yeah, it's going to be low. And so what we could actually do in these smaller populations, or let's say we have an area like Wisconsin, and I'm going to tell you right now, I love hunting Wisconsin.
It's a great state.
Yeah, I've killed a few birds down the driftless. It's one of my favorite places to hunt. But if we over-harvest in an area, you can actually kill out a cohort of birds. And what's very important about turkeys that's different than other species, in order for them to get from one place to the other or to learn over time, their whole evolutionary adaptive behavior is through imprinting, right? So if I take a poult with us and we take them out and show them how to drink a beer and they try to talk a little Kentucky hillbilly, we're going to have a little poult going, all right, Kentucky hillbilly, right? That's what they're going to try to do. And so what we see is these birds, because of imprinting, if they don't have another bird to take them back to a roost site, back to a property, then all of a sudden you may never see a bird there for a long time. So you can effectively kill out a cohort of birds, and we're hearing this like, hey, I don't see birds on my property. And you start talking to them, and you start dissecting what happens, and just like you talked about, we could be over-harvesting in select areas.
We could be over-harvesting, but what about most states? And I know that this goes back to wildlife management far before I've been doing this, but they say you can't stockpile game bird populations. Well, should we be still having fall hen seasons? Like in fall, you get 1 tag, it's either or in most states.
Yep.
Should that be rethought?
I tell you what, there may be some states that's a consideration, but when you look at what the harvest is for hens,
Pretty small.
It's negligible. It's usually less than 1%. Some places it is 0.1%.
So you're talking about very small.
Yeah, and the thing is, most of these hens that we may harvest, it's usually through incidental take. We'll have an archery hunter out, and I've been one of those guys. I'm deer hunting. Ooh, look at these birds. Yeah. Man, I'll take one of those home and get lucky and get one, and I take it in, but I'm not actively pursuing.
But what you're saying is the overall scheme, it's not even a drop in the bucket.
It's not. If we have a decimated population somewhere where we're already changing seasons and everything else, and we have reduced harvest to a very low level, then yeah, we may have to remove that. What scares me is when we remove any type of hunting, oftentimes because the legislative processes, et cetera, it may be hard to get it back.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you right now, we want to make sure we can still hunt we may have to reduce how many birds we harvest or what we do, but I don't want to, remove hunting rights.
That's a really good.
Scary.
That's a really good point because it's something that has been brought up, but you made a great address on that. And I want to circle back to the trapping talk. We also have the Trapper magazine, which we've published. Actually, is the first trapping magazine in America. Perfect storm for bringing turkeys in, but now you bring up a very interesting point. My tactic at home is no prisoners. I am trapping year-round, which I can do.
Yep.
For coons, for coyotes, for a lot of nets with possums, other things like that. But for the guys who either don't have the energy or the means of doing that, you can maybe go out a month before the season and take out some nest raiders, which will help. It's not going to cure the problem. However, it could be an added benefit to getting more poults to survival.
Absolutely. I mean, we have it's literally about a 6-week period that's critical. So you got a hen that's on the nest. Anything with a nose on it's going to sniff that hen out. Turkeys stink, especially if there's moisture on the ground. They put a lot of scent out.
And you've got canines that have tremendous noses.
Absolutely. And so some research we're helping fund in Florida with radio tagged coyotes, bobcats, and radio tagged hens. There's some thoughts that these coyotes are, once they figured out that, hey, turkeys are easy to get to, now they are actually selecting for them. And that has never been even thought about before. And so anything with a nose, they see it. Anything they can see, they're going to go after it. So if we can protect that bird on the nest while she's incubated, and then really the 2 weeks after when those little poults hatch out before they can fly in a tree, that's when most of those birds die.
Right.
And so if we have enough of those, mesopredators, right, those mammalian predators on the ground, bobcats, foxes, coyotes, raccoons, skunks, you name it, all of those can impact potentially turkeys. But we know by far bobcats and foxes are the best land predators we have in general. Some places it may even be fishers, right? It may even be a badger.
We have
and
fishers
so
by us.
it's some of those other things that we don't consider, but we know. We saw some of the research in Iowa that even a badger had gotten in a nest, right? And so there's some really cool things we're seeing with the research.
And we're not even talking about avian predators, which is a whole nother topic.
It's huge.
Owls and hawks by us are so thick that crows are devastating, I know, on turkeys.
They're hammer on nest. And, and you think about the southeast, where do all your raptors migrate to? The southeast. Mm-hmm. And so there's additional pressures in the southeast on turkeys throughout the year that other states don't even see.
I know they've done studies at Auburn on the coyote problem in the southeast in general. Is there any hope there? Because I know that's a tough animal to manage.
It is. Coyotes in the east in general, they're not even a native species.
Right.
It's migrated to come in to really cover where really wolves used to
be.
Okay, and so it's a challenged species. But if I had to tell you right now, if I had to manage for species, I'd rather have a coyote than a bobcat or fox in the day of the week. And the reason why is because there's these predator relationships. Coyotes tend to keep bobcats and foxes out of their home ranges. Not all of them, but they do. And so I would rather have a coyote than a bobcat or more, hammer critter like a fox like a gray fox can climb a tree, hit a bird off the roost. No, And so when you think about this, if you're having a target time, if you're going to trap, be very focused and prioritize with what you have. If it's just coyotes, hit them hard, right? But if you have a lot of bobcats and foxes on your property, I would tell someone prioritize on them first.
It's funny you mentioned that because this goes back quite a few years. There was a swing, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago in a small property where I lived where we had a very large uptick in red fox. Mm-hmm. And I caught him, this was in my garden, I caught him in a box trap, if you can believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Caught 3 of them in a matter of a couple weeks. And I think the statute of limitations is over, so I can actually admit to doing this. I took them and I drove them down the road 5 miles and let them go, which actually is illegal.
Yep.
And I told an old trapper buddy of mine this, and he said, well, you killed that fox. I said, no, I didn't. I released it. He said, no. He said, if you drove that into an area with coyotes, that thing would be dead in very short order. Did not know that, and that's actually when I learned about that relationship. I think it's the same with coyotes and wolves.
Yep.
Up by us, you get farther north, you get a lot more timber wolves. So that's an interesting thing. But it's also, I think, important. Okay, so we talk about habitat. Obviously, number one, supporting a group like Turkeys for Tomorrow should be on your list. Predator management should be a year-round thing. If you want,
a tool.
It's a tool. It's not like you're not going to wipe them out.
That's right.
I've proven that on raccoons. You kill them there, and actually, I know that there's studies that the second you put pressure on a coyote population, on a coon population, those fertility rates actually go higher.
Yep.
So you're it's going to be fighting a battle, but something to keep in mind. However, what are we dealing with nationwide as far as maybe weather trends, farming trends? Are there things there that you're looking at that might also be causing the declines?
Yeah, I mean, some of this is Mother Nature's out of our hands. In springtime, a lot of rain can be bad, not only for the health of the bird, but also there's a lot of water holds scent. And so scent attracts other species. And so that's where we have a lot more issues. It's not necessarily, hey, it's a cold, wet winter and they have the flu or something. It's not that. It's literally scent. Scent is what really kills birds. And plus, it really dampens the habitat around them. So there's heating as well. And so thermal regulation is a big deal, especially if we have a really cool spring with a lot of those frosty mornings, and then you got moisture. That's hard on any bird because they're sitting on the ground to make a living all of a sudden. Bird that's usually up in a tree now is staying on the ground for that long to try to protect that clutch and raise those little dudes. And so it's a challenge. Like, everything's after these birds. And so no doubt about it, weather is something we're never going to be able to
Right,
manage
you can't
for.
do anything about the weather.
Agriculture, there's some concerns about neonics,
disease situations, avian pox, anything like that?
I tell you what, so I'm just going to throw it out there. Some people are going to love me, some people are going to hate me, but I'm going to be really honest. So there's several disease studies that just got done. Our disease studies are on birds that have been harvested, okay? So I don't know about you, I'm an avid turkey hunter, but I'm usually harvesting a bird that comes in gobbling, strutting, really healthy, and I harvest it. Most of your birds that come down with some kind of disease, they are not coming in gobbling.
I
and
know
doing
where
what
you're going,
they're
and I
gonna do.
agree with you on this, yeah.
And I think that there's probably some disease incidences out here that we just don't know what's really going on, because unless we get that bird in and get it tested and confirmed, we don't know. And usually when the bird is weakened and they made it, let's say if it's got blackhead disease, okay? Blackhead disease is histaminoia, and it's basically, it'll make these birds real lethargic, ruffle feathers, sometimes they'll walk in circles. And I'm going to tell you right now, if there's a hawk or an owl or a predator, they get picked off. Now, we may never see that bird and know it happened. If it's avian pox where we can get a visual, that's one of those through gross necropsy. We can see from a distance there's these yellow to dark, scabby forms. I've had people this last week sending me videos and pictures of a whole flock, a whole flock of hens. Looks like they all had avian pox. And this guy's freaking out. He's like, what do we do? I'm like, well, I'm going to be honest with you. If this bird gets near another one, even breathes, so if this bird can breathe that air, basically, and from that scab, and pick it up and take it in, mortality and morbidity is extremely high with avian pox. It's pretty much, once you get it, you ain't going to recover.
Right.
And it'd be better to remove that bird than to let it bump up against another one. Or let's say there's a feed pile out.
That's what I wanted to go
We
with.
need to hit on that too.
Yeah.
What if we have someone that's putting that big thing of corn down for the deer, and it's piling up birds in one spot? Not only are we spreading disease really quickly, but we're also introducing an opportunity to be a target-rich area for predators. And one thing we do know about turkeys and other birds, even though they may be unsuccessful coming there and seeing each one of their brothers and sister die, they'll come back the next day. It's crazy.
And that's why it's illegal. I mean, it's the same thing with waterfowl. And if you, like you said, if you put it there, they're going to come.
Yep.
And I would just stress to everybody, play by the rules.
Yep.
And stay within yourself as far as harvests and things like that. But that is a very I wanted you to touch on that because it's a very real conductor of disease if you have bait piles, or even just If there's, so I don't have big pie, I'm spreading it out with a spin feeder. It doesn't matter. You're bringing turkeys in there. They're congregating, and if they have a disease, it's much more susceptible for them to pass it on to the others.
Absolutely. And so I tell a lot of folks that, hey, I'm feeding for deer. In a lot of states, depending on where you are, it's very legal to put that yellow nugget down year-round. Well, if you're going to do it, and if you really think you're trying to help, take a spreader and run through quality habitat and throw that into habitat if you think there's a real need for birds, okay? Don't put it in a pile. Don't leave it there overnight. Most places in the east, especially the southeast, something called humidity, moisture gets to it, and then you may have aflatoxin issues, et cetera, and other things that could be bad for birds and other species. And so if you really have to do it, don't feed from the same spot. Spread it in a quality habitat, move on, but no one does that.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Wildlife Research Center and the new Golden Rope Scent Rope Kit. The kit comes with 4 ounces of Golden Rope Scent Concentrate, 3 cable ties, and 3 scent ropes made of proprietary fibers meant to absorb the maximum amount of scent. Simply saturate the rope in your scent of choice, hang it from a branch, and watch the trail cam photos come flying in. For more information, go to wildlife.com. Let's just circle back to the main issue is we do have a problem.
Absolutely.
With turkeys, and I know your organization is working to help correct it.
Yeah, we are. This is the whole reason why we formed 4 years ago. We need to address wild turkey decline. We do not want to have another Silent Spring. I don't know about you, but some of the favorite places I've hunted, I've went to, and I don't hear birds anymore.
Oh, man.
Man, it just
depressing.
rips my soul in two.
Yep.
And I can't handle that. And I think about, like, man, I can't even take my daughter to these places that we used to hear things. Why is that? And so we're just trying to find some real-world solutions to solve the problem, to make sure that we all have turkeys for tomorrow.
So where can people go to find out more for Turkeys for Tomorrow, and website URL?
Sure thing, man. Turkeysfortomorrow.org. Really easy to find. We're on all the social media platforms. Look up Turkeys for Tomorrow, and you will find us.
Jason, thank you so much for joining us. For Jason Lupardus, I am Dan Schmidt. Thank you for joining us. This is a special episode. We'll call it Turkey Talk now, of Deer Talk Now. You can catch all of our videos on our YouTube page, YouTube.com/DDH Online, or just go to the podcast, download them all there. We will catch you next Thursday for another brand new episode.
Thank you.
The Deer Talk Now podcast is brought to you by Mossberg, Wildlife Research Center, Traditions Firearms, Outdoor Edge Knives, Hoyt Archery, and 10 Point Crossbows.